Welcome back, guys, to another episode where I show you how I break down the shots and explain the lighting, the compositions, and how to get your own shots. Let's get straight to it. So, today is more architecture with a little bit of street. I'm just gonna go through the shots. I've tried to put less shots this time. Usually, I put in projects. So these were shot within a day. These were shot on the Nikon ZF with the, I believe it's the 28mm f2.8 prime lens. And obviously they were all edited to black and white. They were all edited in Capture One. And I try to put less pictures this time just so the video would take less time. It would be easier for you guys just to watch, because the last video was a little bit long. So to start this, it's again, a lot of the shots are just called basic shots, but this with the graffiti, basically, there are a few ways to do this, a few different perspectives. You can always just shoot it straight. You can always just like show it for what it is. But here, because it was on some kind of grid, if you can see the verticals, and when I saw this, so when I saw these lines, it gave me this feeling that if I created some sort of perspective where just things pull away, so these lines, they create a lot of interest. The verticals should always be vertical, should always remain vertical. But when you add these lines and then they're at an angle, you get a feeling of perspective. Once you have that feeling of perspective, it becomes more interesting. And then when you factor in the amount of contrast that's there, because there's basically no hard light, there's no sun, so the shapes, like this shape, is very prominent. It's very dark. Same for this shape. And then like lighter shades of gray, like this. Eventually you get a sense that it's like a drawing on a blank canvas, on a white canvas. But again, there are a lot of grays within the spectrum, and this creates more interest, basically. A lot of times I'm very interested in graffitis and wall drawings. Not sure why, but most times it's pretty interesting. I actually like it. Let's go to the next one. So the infamous Borch. The main attraction of this shot. So okay, let's deal with the negative space first. So this area, including this. So this is all negative space. There is a little bit here to the side as well. Just draw it out. This is all negative space, and this just creates a little bit of like a frame, basically. And then the key aspect of the picture, let me just zoom in a little bit, is the contrast of scale between these guys and like the Borge itself. So when you look at this picture, this scale, this significance, it shows you how big the building is versus our human scale. A lot of the time when you contrast things to scale of things that you actually know, this happens. So you get a sense of how grand things are. Even with the negative space, even looking to the right and left, you can still tell how big it is, how big this gate is, or whatever it is. And then there's a lot of interest with these streaks of light, because the sun is like somewhere hidden here. And this gives the clouds their shape. There's a little bit of contrast happening here because of the clouds. Same here. And in Dubai, you don't get a lot of clouds, not necessarily. But when you do, it shapes the sky. It fills it to a point where it adds layers of depth and interest. Of course, there's this. Let me just draw it out. this part, the reflective part, versus this part, which is the non-reflective part. And this also creates a little bit of interest. The rest, they're mostly buildings, yeah, like these buildings, they have a little bit of texture to them. This part has a little bit of reflections to it, but the rest, it's pretty basic. The main aspect or the main highlight of this picture is the contrast in scale, basically. This is also a similar thing, but here I usually like playing with light, with sunlight and shadows, and this is the shape I saw. So basically I saw this opening, okay, and then I saw the light, the shadow that it casted from the opening, and in this shape, this was the shape that actually drew me to this composition. When you add it to this shape, let me just draw it out. That's another shape. So they complement each other. And then when you add it to this shape, that's also created by shadow and light. So if you see the lines, they're like, this is parallel to this, and then this is somehow parallel, and then you have this very small pocket up here, created also by another shape. And then you have a lot of lines, like a lot of lines. You have this line, you have this line, you have these lines as well. And when you add these up, there's a lot of interest. Even this, let me just change the color so I can show this better. So even if you look at this shape, there's this continuity within the shape. Part of it is shadow, and part of it is an actual object. Same goes for here. So if you take this apart, if you just look at the shapes and look at how things fall, it creates a nice composition. It looks like it belongs, honestly. I will say I might not be a big fan of this building. Like, I would remove in post, but again, a lot of the times I leave things as they are. I would remove this in post, and I would remove this in post as well. They don't add a lot of interest, but again, because these are more like I just call them street or documentary, so there's no point removing stuff. It's already there. I'm not trying to make it more beautiful. I'm just trying to find beauty in what's already there and showcase it, of course. Well, let's get back to the yellow. So this, again, this is a game of lines and shadows. So main line all the way. See, a lot of lines. They're going. They have their own direction. Same for this. Yeah, and then the shadows. So let me just again change the color. So when you shape this with the shadows, this is a shape. Same for here. This is another shape, excluding the bright part, the lit part. And these create this chair within the chair, you know. It is a bench, but then it becomes a chair. And then the continuity of it, because you have two of those in a row, the shadows in a row, everything, just how the light falls and how it creates this space, and then this, I won't call it empty, but then you have this whole grid up here that just moves up here. And then I'll change the color for this. And then most of this, it is considered empty, but then it has texture. It has a little bit of shadows, it has light. So it adds to telling the viewer where the light comes from, where the direction of the light is, and it helps you enjoy the shot, enjoy the picture. For me, this is one of the pictures that I like, because again, there are a lot of shapes. So let me draw it out. So you have this one, that's one shape. I'm just gonna exclude them. Then you have this, and then you have this big major one, and then within the major one you have smaller ones, a lot of triangles. Once I draw them all out, you're going to notice how many shapes are being created within just one shape, basically. Again, when you add this up, and then you factor in that there are a lot of lines within that structure, when you show the negative space versus the actual space. So, but before I show the negative space and just ruin this, I just want to show the gradient of the space. So here you have dark, and then it becomes lighter. And all of this is basically negative space, which makes the subject itself stand out a lot. And then because these are two different buildings and they're like at different scales from each other, this building, the building that is the higher one, the taller one, is pretty far away from this one. But then when you compress, when you add them together, they seem like they are one building, one subject, with all the shapes. Even the way they intersect, even the angles that the buildings intersect at, makes them feel like they're one building. Even like the triangle that's being created between the building, it makes it feel like even this triangle. If you just continue this shape, you see? So this triangle, so you have this triangle, and you have this triangle, and it adds to one grand shape. Again, when you factor in the fact that you have a little bit of shadow here, a little bit of shadow here, this is shadow, small spots of light, and then here, a lot of light. This adds interest because there is texture. When light changes, when the direction of light changes, it adds texture. So what is reflective? Like here, there's a lot of specularity from the sun, from the reflection, but then here there's not. And then here it's just shadow, and then here it's shadow that moves with a gradient to a little bit less shadow, and so on. Even this small part has its own shapes. We've even seen it in the other picture. And this adds up to an interesting picture. Again, more shadows. So key here is showing the shadow, like here, of the shape that is up here. So basically, you're not sure what these openings look like, but then when you take a look at their shadow, it makes more sense. If there was no light, you wouldn't tell that the openings are in this shape. And then because this has its own woody texture, when light falls on it, it has a certain distinct look, and then when it's shadowy, it has another look. And this, again, it creates interest. It makes the eye question. It makes the eye see it with the light and without the light. And when you factor in this guy, this very white, blobby, reflective creature, and then when you see the shadow on the ground, again, this tells you where the light's coming from, the direction of the light. This tells you that the light is coming this way, because this is the shadow. And this helps give you a sense of scale. You will also find colors. You'll also find a lot of lines. This line, a lot of directional lines that are just leading up within the negative space, which is a good thing. And then these verticals, which are crucial just to giving the eye a sense of verticality. Like, yes, the shot is upright, even with the building up here. Yes, the world is consistent, everything is upright, especially because these columns, they're not straight, they go out at an angle. And definitely this part, this part has a lot of like chamfered edges to it, so it's not easy for the human eye to decide on what it is seeing. So the more you give it context, the more the brain understands, and the more the brain enjoys what it's seeing, what it's viewing. So this is another example. Again, light here. See? It adds to the interest. The rest of it is purely symmetrical. A little bit of negative space here. And then the rest is just as easy as it is, simple as it is. Nothing to it, nothing more. Nice thing is, here, again, shadows, they're a little bit brighter than here, because basically the light's coming from this direction. So you have more light here, you have less light here. And then within the background, if you look at this frame, this is a whole different story, because here you have a lot of different textures within the buildings and the reflections of the glass. This is different. So you're moving from this texture to this texture to this texture, all the way to this texture. This is one of the simple, easy shots, but again, when you watch what the light does, it gives you ideas. So we're in the same zone, we're in the same location, so we've created like 3-4 pictures within the same exact area. We haven't moved, maybe just a little bit, but it's the same zone basically. When you look at this, you find blobby guy here, you find this guy here, and the relationship between them. You have two of these guys here, and then within this scale, within this grand scale of things. So when you add in the scale of the building, let me just show building, and then you add in 3 subjects, and then you connect them to each other, there's a relationship. One of them is a statue, it's there, it's overlooking at the building, at the place. One of them is just there because he is passing out time, and 2 people are there, actually they're moving around, they're going somewhere. And this shows different statuses, different movements, different states. And within this space, with this huge turn on the eraser, with this huge space, shadowy space all the way here, and then there's a lot of sunlight, let me go in yellow, that is in this area. And again, within this sunlight, you get to see the shadows. So you get to see where the light is coming from. Similar to this. Similar to this shadow. Similar to this guy's shadow, if you can still see it here. And this is a representation of life. What life is about. How people move through life. And when you make this in black and white, it helps stop time, honestly. I believe it does stop time. This is what it feels for me. But again, I'm a big sucker of black and white, so yeah. Same location, just a different angle. Now you can see the shapes. Now let me just draw this. And again, I'll always look for the lines. And here, you can see the shapes. You can see the pattern, how it doesn't end here, how it keeps on moving. And then one of the beautiful things here is this relationship. This. How this comes in here, and then how it extends here. So you have this angle all the way. Add to that, they have some sky and clouds. So you're transitioning from gradient sky all the way to clouds. Then you have the buildings here. And then I'm not a big fan of this area. Let me just mark it out. So this area for me is pretty dark. I believe this should have gotten more interest. This should have gotten more light, but either like editing or in real life. But judging by where the sun is coming from, it's definitely in the shadows. But I would actually, looking back at this picture, I would actually raise the shadows in this area a little bit just to make it more interesting, because it is a big portion and it has texture, and it's actually not being utilized correctly. Okay, another picture of the board. Now, this is a basic game of framing. Let's start with the lines, as always. So you have this line, and then so you have this triangle, and you have this. So basically you've squared off your subject, your board. And just to keep everything interesting, here here you have a line again. You have this line, and you have a very different texture here than what you have here. On this side of the frame, you have openings. And then these openings also create interest because this is a big area, it's a big zone. And if you don't have enough texture within it, it's going to be very boring. Add to that, that within this frame, the scale, I'll change the color, the scale of the porch is quite proportionate to the frame itself. And then you have these guys just filling part of the frame. You have this beautiful tree that's filling part of the frame. When you add it up with this little clouds here, little clouds here, and then the rest of the space, it is just, it's the blank canvas. It's the space. And here, this creates a composition that funnels the viewer's vision from out to in, slowly pushing to where you want them to go, slowly pushing to the main aspect, the main interest in the picture. But then because it's a static picture, you have to guide people into what you want them to see. You can always easily just, create a picture that's just like this and just say, hey, this is the Burj, this is how it looks. But then it's too obvious. It's in your face. When you go like this, you can see the environment. You can see the rest of the world. You can see what's happening around you, plus the subject. I'm not gonna call my favorite, but one of the ways I really like composing is through symmetry. And this subject made it very easy. Again, one line, two line, and then you add this line, then you add this line. Come on, it's a perspective. It reminds me of like my days in college doing architecture. It's very clear perspective. Oh, come on, you can do it. Yeah. And so I'm not gonna go through this a lot. It's pretty basic. I'm just gonna show you the lines that it's creating. And the more you take a look at the lines, the more it makes sense. And what I can do is start just factoring in different textures. So one texture, pretty obvious, and then another texture, and then let's go for blue, and then another texture. This alone just created interest, even in this area. So you have this color here versus, let's go back to yellow, this color here. And there's like layering. It's like a cake. It is symmetrical, but it is like a cake. And then when you factor in this guy, this very nice person that actually decided to walk in, I've just put in a human element. So within a very static, symmetrical shot with a lot of textures, I still have a human element. It might not be the most interesting, but you factor in the reflection and the guy, there's life. It's not just a static building. You've added life. Again, lines. Easy one. One line for framing. Another more curved line for framing. And within this space, you have, change the color, you have this subject. And I'm going to consider this building to be negative space as well because it's pretty bright. All your frame is ready. And then to make it interesting, honestly the building is already interesting, but you have this beautiful white strip here, and this makes you just focus on these small lines that create texture, that creates shapes. And that's it. Yes, I can tell you that there's a very nice texture here, this wooden texture, which it is. It adds interest to a very solid negative, large negative area. Same for this, same for these very slight lines. Again, creates texture. When you have texture, your eye is more, it's more focused, it's more relaxed. It's not just bland. And other than the sky, the rest is a complete mixture of different textures. And again, you look at this in black and white, and all of a sudden it's interesting because there's a lot of different gradients of like shades of gray and different shadows. Probably if you see this in color, it wouldn't look as interesting because the color contrast here is pretty dull, to be honest. This is one of the pictures I like, but there's nothing to it. It is a very basic architectural shots. Verticals are obviously vertical. You have a little bit of texture coming from here. This framing, this shows you that there are other buildings. These lines, they seem a lot closer than the building, so it seems like foreground, middle ground, and background. But what I like about this building is that it is so soft. The windows are perfectly placed within the space, and then you have a little bit of darker windows down here, and like you have light windows, you have medium light windows, and then dark windows, which is nice. And then even aside, you have a little bit of specularity here, a little bit of shadows in the reflection here, so it creates a few different shapes. It creates this, it creates this area, and then it creates this area. And generally the building itself, like the how it looks versus, let me choose a different color, versus the negative space around it, the sky, it's a good percentage. It's there. It looks very soft, and it is just well placed within the area. Again, this was shot like within a slither. It's a very small space, but it showcases the building very nicely, very very nicely. This is another implementation of shadows, light, dark canvas, and light canvas. I'm gonna just show the shapes created. One shape, again, another frame, and the board. And this here, what makes this interesting is the cloud formations. So you just draw out the clouds here, draw out the clouds here, draw out the clouds here, and then you have this zone, this area that doesn't have a lot of clouds. This is where the board is in. So you have dark here, and then you have this white frame, beautiful white frame, but then it's not just dark, so it could have been this. But when you look at this as a composition, it's fair, it's nice, but when you open it up a little bit, you get a sense of the rest of the place. What was there? What's this? What's the ceiling light? Where the light is coming from? It adds directionality, basically. Okay. Again, simple, easy architecture shot. The buildings are lit from the front. You can see it's very obvious that this is the shadow side. This is the bright side. You can even see how the shadows are moving, like how it's coming at an angle. So this is purely in the shadows. For me here, I was more interested in this line, slanted perspective, again, and then how things correlate to this, how the verticals are correlating to this horizontal, which is not technically horizontal, it's slanted, but then this created this kind of like a city skyline effect on a mini scale, basically. And when you add these up, you get a very nice sense of the buildings, and there is a little bit of symmetricality to it, a little bit, with the difference is that this is a shorter building than this. And of course, let's not forget the beauty of having clouds in the sky. So this formation, a little bit of this, and this covering the background. So it makes for a nice shot. A lot of these shots are just shot on the spot. Right there, you see what's there. You see life. And it's how you decide to capture it. I don't move the buildings, I don't move the light. I wait for stuff, but I don't move stuff around. I just look to see what I want to capture, what is interesting for me. And then this one, which is the last one, this is an interesting composition. Basically split the picture in thirds. This top completely black. You have this part, if you can see it. And that's it. The rest is just completely black. And then the rest of the frame it's a clean frame. Nothing to it. Just a building rising up within, again, it's a clean slate here. If you take a look, there's barely even any gradients to the sky here. So it is very clean. And then when you take a look at these lines, come on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They all converge at a point. Let's not forget this. And this, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it is pushing this building within its space. It's pushing you to look at the negative space, and then the negative space pushes you back. It's like a ping pong game basically, because the lines lead the brain here, and then the brain comes here. All the brain can see is this little piece of light, so they go back down, and it just keeps on going back and forth. And because this is not like a symmetrical shot, like this isn't like it, if I split it into two, like it is here now, and just create the space in the middle, it's not as interesting. There's no ping pong effect. But then because it's in thirds, this is even like less than a third. But then you go up there, it's not really interesting, so you go back down because the bottom part is the bigger part, so probably has more stuff you need. So you go back down, and then you take a look, you start from the bottom, and then you move with the lines in your back in the negative space. It's there's a lot of tricks that you can play with your pictures, with your subjects, with your viewers. It is about you understanding what makes it interesting, you seeing it in a way that makes it interesting. And when that happens, you can show people. They might not be aware of what you're seeing, but if you understand the psychology behind what people see, how they want to see, how they perceive light, how they perceive color, then you are the author. You create the interest. And a lot of your viewers won't really know why they're interested, why they're hooked, but they will enjoy it. They will like looking at it. They will like tasting the language that you're speaking. I hope you guys like this. I hope this series is worth watching. I would appreciate comments, really. And until I see you again, stay safe.